Stuck in sleep paralysis, tearing apart your own home, and spending your entire life looking up conspiracy theories. I'm your host, Che Durena. We have all of this on today's most amazing top 10 list. Coming in at number 10, we have locked in sleep. We have covered sleep paralysis many times on this channel, so most of you at home will know about the horrors of this ailment. But for those of you who don't know, this is when you fall asleep but you're kind of half awake and you can't move, and then you start to have these waking dreams when some horrible creature will appear and torment you and you can't move the entire time, like I just said. It sounds like hell on earth. But did you know that this can cause insomnia? There are several reports of people developing insomnia because they have such horrendous sleep paralysis. When you think about it, it makes perfect sense. If every time you fall asleep you see monsters, then why would you ever want to sleep again? Personally, I like to avoid contact with any monsters or demons at any point. Coming in at number 9, we have prolonged sleep paralysis. We are rolling off the last point. If you start staying up for extended periods of time, developing some harsh insomnia to deal with your sleep paralysis, then eventually you are going to break and you will need to fall asleep. The body will win eventually and you're going to be sound asleep, or you're just going to be stuck in a waking dream and see demons for way longer than you should. Yeah, that can happen. A Reddit user told a story of how they would fight off sleep because they would constantly be visited by a creature they called the Spire. It had a long pin head and what seemed to be an opening at the center of it that was glowing dark red. They hated seeing the Spire, and they once went 48 hours without sleeping and then crashed super hard. When they finally passed out, they were asleep for 18 hours and it felt like most of that sleep was accompanied by the Spire. It's hard to tell how long you're in sleep paralysis for because they're very similar to dreams in a way. But this guy said that his sleep paralysis was so long that he thought it would never end, and the Spire was speaking to him and was touching him for extended periods of time. Thank God I have zero problems with sleeping. Coming in at number 8, we have seeing messages. We have talked about waking dreams in previous parts of this series, but just in case you haven't seen the first two and just jumped into number 3, then let me break it down for you. When you get such bad insomnia that you can't sleep, you might start to enter a dream state while you are awake, and you can have trouble discerning what was dream and what was real life. This story was pulled from Dusty MC456, who said once while they were sleep deprived, they were writing down on a piece of paper and they started to see words appear. Words that they didn't remember writing down. The words started to move around on the page and it seems like someone was trying to send them a message. They tried to comprehend what was happening, but the words were too hard to read because they kept bouncing all over the place. Eventually they snapped out of it, and when they looked back at the paper, there was nothing there. This is where this ended, but I imagine if it continued, they would have thought they were being transmitted information from a secret individual. Coming in at number 7, we have hallucinations. Reddit user Former Window talked about hallucinations they would get from insomnia. They wrote that they would have both visuals and auditory hallucinations, and after reading the post, I'm not sure which one was scarier. They said it would be common for them to see shadowy figures in the corner of their eye, like a tall person shuffling around or an animal scurrying across the floor. They would quickly turn their head and see nothing there. They also said they would hear singing, like little kids singing, and it would get louder and louder, like the person was closing in. Honestly, the singing kids would scare the hell out of me. That sounds like what happens when Freddy Krueger's closing in. Coming in at number 6, we have answering imaginary questions. Reddit user ColorMePKeen talked about how after they had a baby, they were so stressed out about something going wrong that they couldn't fall asleep. It didn't help that the baby would wake them up in the middle of the night, so any chance they would have of falling asleep would be disturbed anyway. Well, this got so bad that they didn't sleep for 3 days, and they started to answer questions out loud that they were hearing in their own head. Coming in at number 5, we have ripped their house apart. A story pulled from Reddit follows a man's descent into paranoia from insomnia. He could never sleep and started to think that his house was bugged. This paranoia fed into his insomnia, and things compounded until he was only able to sleep for a couple hours every night. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore and started to go through every inch of his house to try and find some sort of monitoring device. And this wasn't just looking under the table or behind the TV. This was a full demolition job. They started to rip up the floorboards. They were ripping out the drywall. They were going through the electrical, pulling out plumbing, taking apart electronics, cutting open the furniture. And this person even started to dig up their backyard because they thought they could find some sort of secret wiring that was leading to their home. One of the wildest parts about this whole thing was that this person didn't even have any sort of experience in home wiring, plumbing, or any of those things. It was a miracle that they didn't accidentally electrocute themselves. Well, in the end they found nothing, but they were still in a harsh state of paranoia. paranoia. They had nowhere to turn and just sat in their destroyed home. It wasn't until their sister came to visit and saw them in this state that they were able to get help. Coming in at number 4, we have lived in their car. As you can probably tell by now, insomnia can lead to pretty extreme sleep deprivation, which can lead to paranoia, which can lead to hallucinations that you will start to believe. Another case of horrible insomnia follows someone who was too afraid to sleep because they were convinced that there was a demon in their home. They thought that if they fell asleep for too long, the demon would take control of their soul. Imagine being possessed in your sleep and then you wake up on a Monday and you gotta go to work. What a horrible way to start your week. Well, eventually that lack of sleep fed into their fear of demonic possession, and there was only one thing left to do, and that was live in your car. This person packed what they could fit into their car and then drove off. They lived in their car for 6 months while they tried to find a new place to live that was demon free. Of course, living in your car isn't great for your sleep, so the insomnia persisted until they actually had a fresh bed to sleep in. But who knows, maybe this one was justified and there was a demon in their home. Next on the list, we have the commanding voice. Reddit user Free as a Nerd talked about how their insomnia got so bad they started to hear a voice in their head. It would come and go, but the longer they didn't sleep, the louder and clearer the voice became. During an exceptionally bad bout with insomnia, they stayed up for 4 days. Man, I really have no idea what that would be like. Once it hits 12:30, I'm ready to tuck in and pass out. I don't care if the party is just starting. Well, a Reddit user was now hearing the voice in their head, and it was so loud they had no choice but to listen. The voice told them to look in the mirror, which they did, and while staring at themselves in the mirror, the voice told them to start pulling out their hair. The voice said that if they did this, they would finally be able to fall asleep, so they gave in and started pulling out their hair. Now, they didn't pull it out to the point where they went bald, but they did make their head a little bit patchy, and of course, this didn't help them fall asleep. Coming in at number 2, we have got obsessed with conspiracy theories. This one was posted to Reddit by Reddit user Riz34Zill. They said that they always been a skeptical person and were constantly looking up conspiracy theories. I think a lot of us out there are guilty of delving a little too deep into conspiracy theories, but this Reddit user said it became an obsession, and this is where their insomnia started. They would get home from work and then go right to the computer and start looking up YouTube videos about certain conspiracy theories. They would stay up all night watching video after video about flat earth, about the Illuminati, Area 51. It didn't matter how far the topic was. Eventually, it got so bad they couldn't fall asleep. They would feel anxious if they didn't go do their nightly research. If they didn't spend hours every night digging up some of the most bizarre corners of the internet, they would feel as if they were falling behind and that the powers that be were getting a leg up on them. This newfound insomnia was now feeding into this nightly routine, and right when it seemed like it was going to be his life forever, he snapped out of it. He watched a series of videos that just seemed too extreme, and he started to question all the things he'd been looking up. He took a step back and realized that he needed to stop, and he felt his anxiety melt away, and he was able to get back to a regular sleep routine. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have camped out in the woods. This is another case of someone worried that they were being watched. I pulled this one off of a mental health help forum, and this person talked about how they struggled with paranoia their whole life. They took medication to deal with their constant fear that they were being monitored. Eventually, they started to feel better, so they went off their medication, and this is where the downward spiral started. It started with them not wanting to be around screens, so they got rid of their phone and their laptop. They were afraid of cameras, so they refused to go to any store that had a CCTV system. After this, they started to think that there could be someone or some sort of robotic device in their home that was watching them all the time. Now they couldn't sleep, and this insomnia only made the problem worse. They decided to fill a backpack full of goods and run off into the woods. They spent 2 weeks living out in the woods before someone found them. A hiker was coming through and saw this makeshift campsite and decided to talk to him for a little bit. After speaking to him, he realized that he was not well, and the hiker helped him get back to the city and visit a mental health center to get his medication and his life back on track. Alright guys, that has been our list. Thank you so much for tuning in. I've been your host, Jade Arena. We'll see you next time. This is where they ended the story, but I imagine which can lead to hallucinations, which can lead to once it hits 12:30, I'm ready to